Hi, jewells68 here for Talk to Me Tuesday on Tuesday, July 11th. A very happy anniversary. Today is the wedding anniversary of our own Jennifer. And she is away having an awesome time on her anniversary trip. So happy anniversary to you. And anyway, let's get right to it. Decided it was time to rearrange the project room again this weekend, just a little bit, but in preparation for quilting the Project of Doom, I have gotten the top, the batting, and the backing all bagged up along with my iron and basting spray and pins and any number of things that might come in handy, like blue painter's tape, etc. for basting a quilt, and I have them in a giant tote bag. I took them to work today but didn't get a chance to do anything with them. I will take them again tomorrow, and hopefully I will get a chance on my break tomorrow to get started basting that quilt. In preparation for that also, I rearranged a little bit in here. You can't see it and I'll show you later, but it's I got the my old Kenmore out, the one that I quilted Phoebe's pod and my brother's quilt and Ken's quilt all on. And just out of curiosity, I measured the throat space from needle to machine. And on the Singer that I had so much trouble quilting Jan's quilt, my sister's quilt on, it's only 5 inches. I didn't think it was that small. No wonder I had so much trouble trying to free motion quilt on that damn thing. The Kenmore is 7. Actually a little more. I think it's more like 7 1/4, 7 1/2, something like that. So yeah, it's no wonder I was able to do the other ones, but not my sister's quilt on the Singer, which was, like I said, horrible. So yeah, so I got that set up in the quilting table area with the big foam extension table. So I've got the Kenmore all set up. I got it all cleaned and oiled and ready to go. I also redid my cutting table, and the table that it was on, it now has the Singer on it, and that's now my piecing table. I broke my walking foot this weekend, so I just had to order a new one for the Singer. I still don't have one that works on the Kenmore because it died, oh gosh, I don't know, last year. They start at like $50, so I think I'm just going to wait on that, because I would eventually like to get an even bigger, like a mid-arm maybe, or even a long arm would be great. So yeah, so I ordered a new walking foot. This time I ordered an open toe just to see if I like that better for the Singer, and that should arrive, what is today, Monday? That should arrive Wednesday. I think I paid like, I don't know, 11, 12 bucks for it, so we'll see if it's any good. I was really happy with the one I got on Amazon last time that I only paid 10 bucks for. And the same thing seems to be breaking my walking feet every time, which is basically machine binding the final side of a binding on a quilt when it's sort of kind of in a bunch. After you've machine stitched it to the back, and then I machine stitch it to the front to stitch it down, and I do that on my Linus quilts, and any quilt where I think that I can't really trust the owner to wash it properly. My brother's I hand stitched to the back, but anyway, that seems to be what has killed all of my walking feet when I go back and look at like blogs and stuff about it. So I clearly won't be doing that anymore, I guess. And it broke putting bindings on these hot pads, I guess. It was 2014, so 3 years ago I made these, and they've been sitting here unfinished for 3 years. I've showed them off before after I did it, but this was my first attempt. This was with the Singer 301. And Jennifer had given me some tips, so I had prepped these in advance of the trip. And then we just hung out in the hotel and quilted. This was a leftover block from the quilt I made for my great niece a few years back, the granny square quilt. I don't know, for some reason I was like, oh, I don't need to do that, I'll do an actual quilt. So I had these 3 pot holders just sitting here in my UFO bag, and I got the UFO bag out when I got the pod out to get it ready to take to baste. And I went through the whole thing, pulled everything out, and these 3 things were in there, and I said, all right, damn it, I'm finishing these pot holders so they can be used. So now I have a few. They're not really nice enough I wouldn't want to give them to anybody. One of them even has like a hole on the front where I tore the fabric. So, but they're fine for using here around the house. And so I will use them for that. And now they are done, and they're no longer in my UFO bag. So, yeah, so I got that bag emptied out. I put away anything that was in there with where it needed to go, and now it is just my take the pod to baste bag. So that is ready to go. I went to Project Linus this past weekend, and I did turn in those 2 quilts, and I will put a picture of those here. And you'll remember I had brought home all those orphan blocks from the teacher that had donated a bunch of stuff. Well, they had brought even more stuff this month, this past weekend. Apparently that was just a portion of what they had gotten from her. She had had a big sale at her house, and I guess whatever didn't sell, she just gave to us at the end. So there's quite a bit of fabric and all sorts of things. So, so there was more of that, and I took the top, the Southwest Orphans that I showed you last week. I took that top with me to see if I could find some backing fabric to use on it. In the fabric that came in from that same lady, there were 2 larger pieces of yardage that are enough to do a back, I think. Neither are like an ideal, but both of them would go fine. So neither of them are really very youth oriented, but the quilt isn't either. So I will insert a picture of those 2 options here. And maybe you can tell me which you think would be better. Both of them should be more than enough to do at least the back, if not the binding. I took some pictures of, I also brought home, you know, I swore I wasn't going to do this anymore, but I did not bring home any more orphan blocks, but I did bring home fabric. I'm going to say it was at least a couple of pounds worth of fabric. I brought home that backing fabric, which I already showed you the picture of, and there was a bunch of other fabric, and rather than show it all to you now, I've already put it all away. I took pictures of sort of the different kinds of fabric that I brought, and then just a big pile of it all together. So I will insert that here. But while I was there, one of the things that she had donated was this kind of weird roll of these pre-cut bricks. I don't have any loose out that I haven't cut up already, but here's some on my wall. So none of the blocks that are here I brought home, but the bricks I did, these right here. So it was a roll of bricks that somebody had already cut up to use. I don't know if they were pre-cut that way, or if, and they might have been, because there was like a weird thing of sticky paper at the end of some of them, like it had a paper label on it or something. it had been in that roll for a really long time. It had a rubber band around it. So I took it apart, and originally I thought, oh, I'll do a brick quilt, but there really wasn't enough to do that. It was much too small. So then I thought, what I would do is get out the rest of the orphan blocks that I have in my bin that I brought home last month, and pick out the most kid-oriented, bright color, non-boring, grown-up-y prints I could find in there, and turn those into a quilt and use the bricks to fill in. So that's what I decided to do. So this was one of those blocks, and there was one of these. There was actually 2 blocks with this fabric. They were 2 totally different blocks. One was a partial block of another one of those like Southwest Star things, like I did in the last quilt, and I took it apart. I took it apart and made another block just like the other one because the fabrics were all identical, and I think the only thing I needed to add was 1 square of black fabric, which I had in my stash already, so I filled in with that. This was part of a larger block, and I should have just cut it down, but then I had a brilliant idea of something I was going to do to take part of it off, and now I just have this big mess of these little tiny triangles, because I took it apart more than I had intended to, and I decided the plan I came up with was these were already 7 3/4. These 2, and this was a little bigger, and this was a little bigger, so I just cut them down to 7 3/4. This was one of the orphan blocks, this little tiny square, and this little tiny square were in with the orphan blocks. So I added a square of my black, and added a square of my black, and then added a brick to one side. And then I just took some of the remaining bricks and made more 7 1/4 or 7 3/4 blocks with those. And then I took some of the leftover bricks and cut them in half and started using them to fill in space-wise between those blocks and put the rest of the bricks here. So I'm still playing with that. I don't know how that's going to end up. I guess that's it. I look forward to watching your videos, and I will see you next week.